Hello, my friends. It's a special Saturday with Christian Finnegan, except I'm posting it on Friday. So whenever you're listening to it, I am hoping that you're okay. It was a pretty crazy day in news because one of the most horrible, embarrassing, despicable acts potentially ever in the Oval Office occurred in front of cameras when Donald Trump attacked a international hero by most people's standards, Volodymyr Zelensky, in the Oval Office. At this point, you saw it, you heard about it, you have thoughts on it. Christian and I talked about that and more. He's going to be joining us in Vegas at PODJAM. I hope you get your tickets. We talk about this fun thing that he's planning on doing for us while we're all out there. You should subscribe to his newsletter, New Music for Olds. If you like music, you will love that newsletter. Go subscribe to it. Link in the show notes. Watch his stand-up specials. Support him on social media. Follow him there. And here is my latest with the always thoughtful, thought-provoking, funny, interesting, and awesome Christian Finnegan. Christian Finnegan. There he is, everybody, and we'll see you in Vegas.
Peter Dominic.
Yeah, sing it.
I was responding in kind.
Yeah, no, I wanted you to keep going with the rest of the words.
Peter Dominic, he's a guy with a shiny head, and he makes people feel bad about the country. There it is.
He does. He hates America. He roots for Canada. He roots for Canada.
Honestly, rooting for Canada feels like the only patriotic American response at this point.
What do you think about do you know anybody up there? You talk to anybody up there? You paying attention? They're very upset with us.
How could you not be? We may have spoken about this last time. But it's not just, there's so many things that are repulsive about it, but it's not even just hey, we should merge countries, like you should become part of the United States. It's you'll become the 51st state. Like, we're going to tack you on Guam or some territory somewhere. It's just so, and it's not, obviously it's not a serious proposal. That's the thing, is I actually do think on some level when he started floating it that he thought, oh, this could, maybe they'll be into this. But the minute he started being like, oh, you're going to be our 51st state and you need us. I'm not being terribly articulate about this, but it's just, I can't believe we're talking about this shit.
I know. Did you see that? Did you see what he wrote about putting Wayne Gretzky on the spot and all that?
I know that people were booing slightly at the Four Nations hockey tournament.
Trump wrote a whole message about asking what does Wayne Gretzky think about becoming American, and saying whatever Wayne wants. It was bizarre, like he was on shrooms and wrote it or something. But I ask you this because
it's the equivalent of some of my best friends are Canadian, essentially, well, and then you're. Yeah. Well, I'm not a racist. Ask my black friend. And then that person is then in position to either like contradict you or to sell themselves out. Yeah. So it's like him putting Wayne Gretzky on the spot. It's like, all right, Wayne Gretzky now has two options. He either becomes the focus of Donald Trump's bullshit or he alienates himself to his entire country.
Or he does what he seems to be doing, which is hides, says nothing, and lets his wife put out a statement. But doesn't seem like the bravest cat in the end. But here's the other issue is I'm seeing a lot of people are saying, and I got to get your take on it, that at this point, Donald Trump, there's no more checks and balances. He doesn't care about running again. He ran to stay out of jail and to be the spotlight. And now every day is the show, and he's performing. And he really, like, it's chaos. And nobody knows what's going on, and he does not care. And we're going to talk about what happened in the Oval Office with the Ukrainian president. But it's all a show. It's all performative. I don't think it was that way the first term. I think he was actually trying to get legislation passed and do things. Now it's just every day an executive order. It's just a show. What are your thoughts around that theory?
I think a lot of people assume that authoritarians and dictators, that they, from the age of 10 years old to like, someday I'm going to be an all-powerful dictator.
Right, like they were studying.
I think a lot of these dudes get cornered into it from their own hubris and bad behavior. You know what I mean?
Yes,
if you set up a situation where you can never allow yourself to show humility or to be bested in any way, shape, or form, then if somebody humiliates you, you have to then up the ante because you set up this paradigm where it's, I cannot be embarrassed in any way, shape. And so I do worry that a lot of the people who are like, he's just Trump being Trump, a little bit of what you're saying is he doesn't care anymore. He's just phoning it in. All of those things could be true. And it may not matter in terms of people's day-to-day experience living in the United States of America over the next 4 years. If you can't if you can't cross state lines without having to show your ID and make sure that there's nobody trying to get an abortion in your car, or you can't hire a trans person because their civil rights have been stripped and they have no protections, and your other employees complain, it really doesn't matter whether Trump is quote unquote being serious or not. Because I'll guarantee you this, the people, if you think Trump's not in control, I guarantee you the people who are in control care about this shit. And it's
very good point. Very well said. While he's performing for the bread and circus, he's got actual people doing actual things, destroying lives. And you just made a short list of the lives that are being
and so much of it is destroying things that they can then fill the vacuum. Finding companies, obviously Elon being a perfect example, this whole thing with the FAA, that taking it away from Verizon and giving it to Starlink, and him putting out some tweets earlier today that, this Verizon system, it was teetering on the edge. We had to come in and save the FAA or else air traffic was going to get, okay, sure. So you're expecting us to believe that after 150 or however long the FAA has existed, commercial air travel has existed, that somehow it was about to plummet off a cliff the moment that Elon Musk, who happens to have a country that does the same thing, was available to swoop in and fix it. And so a lot of the stuff that they're quote unquote breaking, they're breaking to then provide the solution themselves. And that's how you end up fucked. That's how you end up stuck 3 years from now, where there is no way to protest because the people who you'd be protesting against are controlling the media and the functions of government. They're controlling the methods by which you might protest. And so
it's a very possible
scenario. I don't really care whether, at this point, I don't give a shit whether Trump is serious about what he says or not. He gets backed into making it serious because people don't immediately kiss his ring. He'll say something stupid and he might not fully mean it in the moment, but the minute somebody pushes back, it then becomes something he has to have because he has built up this idea where he can never be embarrassed.
Can never be, you say embarrassed and you say humiliated, but which is, I think all of us suffer a certain amount of loss of dignity or embarrassment upon humiliation, is the word you're using. But I would just argue he can't lose even a golf match. He can never not be number one, the best. And so that's a different kind of sociopathy.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. He's not capable of genuinely feeling humility. So it's like, humiliation for him is more just he doesn't want to be degraded or he can't be anywhere but the top of the pyramid in any situation whatsoever.
All of that leads us to the performance in the White House yesterday with the president of Ukraine. And what I've been seeing as a trend for years now is the strategy on the right and my local school board and at the federal government is make the victim the aggressor. And if it weren't so audacious, it's breathtaking. It's breathtaking to see these handicapped kids are attacking the jocks. What are we talking about? The kid is in a wheelchair. And so the victim is the aggressor in this case. Ukraine is the victim. And I guess my point is that most of the world objectively sees this accurately and knows that Russia's the baddie. They've always been the baddie. It wasn't new. Putin's a real bad guy, and he invaded Ukraine. They know the victim is Ukraine and Zelensky. And so the victim was being abused in the White House. And so, yes, American MAGA idiots are going to think he was tough, but most of the world is going to see that and react, I think, probably the right way, as I've seen the reactions. It just happened about an hour before we're taping. So what are your thoughts on all of it? That's my only one right now.
We're seeing, it's funny to watch the goalposts move in real time, that for the entire election cycle, it was, why are we wasting time defending Ukraine? This isn't our fight. Why should we be spending all of this money on adventurism or whatever the term that America first? Why are we spending all this money in Ukraine when we should be spending it here at home? Now you're seeing that it's not really that. It's Ukraine started it. It's not just that we shouldn't have to defend Ukraine. It's that, no, Ukraine is actually to blame for this. And it's fascinating to see. And I'm sure that there will be probably a plurality, at least, of the Republicans who will adopt those talking points because they're very used to doing it at this point. What is the opinion that we've all decided to have and pretend that we've always had? Oh, okay. I will now adopt that opinion in every comment section of every stupid podcast that I watch.
Right.
But I do think that there are some people, I've said this before and I've been wrong, but I do think that there are some people, I think a lot of people watching that felt a visceral feeling of disgust. I don't know if you've seen a clip of Karl Rove reacting to it. Really everything but saying he's the only winner here is Putin. Like, this is not the conversation that you're supposed to have in public. This is the kind of thing that you're supposed to have behind closed doors so that then you can have a little press conference in front of the cameras and you can keep negotiating. But now that's impossible. There's no way. And I had a point.
I would just say that I think Ukraine is the winner here because when you create sympathy for the victim, which is I think how the world will see, yes, Putin's a winner in a way for sure, but the rest of the world, Europe is going to be like, just move.
Oh yeah. I'm saying this is what Karl Rove was saying. That's as far as Karl Rove could go because he's not going to be like, yeah, we're wrong, Ukraine is right. But so he has to take this looks bad for everybody. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that in terms of propaganda, and I don't mean that as a negative term, but just in terms of PR value, that Zelensky will come away from this looking like the winner. That may not mean that he is the winner in literal terms, though. That's what's so disgusting about what Trump and Vance and the whole group of them just circled around him like child playground bullies, that this is not equal ground. You are acting like America's strength is your personal strength in this argument. That Trump is taking all of the financial and military and soft power might of the United States and saying, like, you should be thanking me for it. It's like, dude, you've been president for a month, and quite frankly, you're like ruining all of that. You're spending America's soft power, a hedge fund guy at a strip club. You're just throwing out everything. It's all, I don't know if that metaphor works. But
he's selling it.
So I do think that Zelensky might come away from this looking really good, but that it still may be a serious net negative for the people of the Ukraine because America is still America.
I urge everybody, absolutely right. I urge everybody to go back and watch that video for the 9th time, if you can stomach it the first, and watch Just Rubio. There's an angle where
brutal.
You see.
Yeah.
Did you do
melting into his couch. Yeah. He looks so like rumpled and like his shoulders are up and he looks like a kid waiting on the vice principal's couch. Like when you get sent and you're in trouble and you're going to get suspended or whatever, but you're waiting out in the lobby to be called in.
I was there times. Do I know it? There's a statue of me in that position in my middle school.
Really?
Yeah, no, this guy was one of the harshest critics of Putin's Russia in the entire United States Senate for his entire career. He is a Cuban American and has some feelings about communism. So he always targeted it. It was good for him politically. It was good for him. He probably believed it. Most Cuban Americans I know believe those things about Russia. And so, if they live in America, obviously. And yet there he was defending Putin, meeting with Putin's lead negotiators, his counterpart, Lavrov, who he knows everything about. I'm sure he's read the classified report on the guy. And there he was being friends with him after all those years of being critical. He's a hollow man.
Yeah. This might be wish casting on my part, but it's like you find your joy where you can get it in these dark times. But just imagining the miserable, watery shit that Rubio probably took immediately after this press conference of just like his insides must have been just churning like that mixer the whole time. I'm sure he was sick to his stomach about it. And good because he knows he's one of the few people who still knows how full of shit he's being.
Yeah, no, I think that you're wrong because
you can tell he hasn't fully convinced himself to buy in fully yet. He's saying the words like Vance now believes all of it. Vance totally conquered his gag reflex, and now he is just completely in line. Whereas Rubio still struggles with it, and you can see it on his face.
I love that you think there's something inside Rubio that could come out.
I think they're all they all think of themselves as great men, the quote unquote capital G, capital M, great man.
Yeah.
And to sit there has to be a how the fuck did I get here moment. I have to. I hope.
Lots of other things I want to ask you, including what your thoughts are on what's happening with corporate media right now. Specifically, you're seeing all the censorship from the administration on you got to use these words, you got to say these things. And by the way, we're going to do search terms, and we find any agency or employee whose job description includes gender anything, we're going to delete that. So that's a form of cancellation for sure. But the White House Correspondents' Dinner for Association for the first time is not going to be choosing what reporters get access to the president. It's always been done by them. It's always been very objective. You've had crazy people all the way from the left to the right, and obviously the corporate people in that front row. Now Trump's going to choose. So you're going to have that guy, Brian Glenn, who criticized the Ukrainian president today. The balls that he doesn't have. What a coward. For one day, they should send him to the front to cover the Ukraine war and see if he fucking lasts an hour. But these are the guys now that are.
And I'm sure you know this, but for people listening, the guy who asked Zelensky why he never wears a suit 2 days after Elon Musk, or 1 day after Elon Musk was basically running a cabinet meeting in a T-shirt that said tech support on it. So this is not some weird stance that Republicans have been in lockstep about. But the guy asking Zelensky why he never wears a suit is Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend.
And I think he's
just to give you an idea of the caliber of human beings that are being led into the press inner circle in Trump's White House.
Trump was giving away hats in the Oval Office the other day. I think it said Trump was right about everything, and he was tossing them out. Yeah. And I think that guy leapt in front of a child to get one of those hats.
Yeah, the way a good Secret Service agent would leap to take a bullet, he was in there.
You also know that guy Brian Glenn absolutely stole a home run ball from a child's hands.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, seriously, Google, do an image search for this Brian Glenn, this dude's name, and tell me you can't see him wrestling a baseball away from a 5-year-old. Absolutely.
When you do the image search, that's the top one you'll find. Here's Brian Glenn taking a child's candy. Piece of shit.
Garbage people. Yeah, it's curious to see this, getting back to the Zelensky thing just a little bit. By tomorrow, by the time this airs, there probably will be a conventional wisdom that has fully set in. But it's still being written right now. I'm curious to see my prediction, what will happen is it'll be a microcosm of what happened on January 6th, where you'll have a lot of mainstream, quote unquote, not that they exist anymore, but mainstream conservative politicians and speakers like Karl Rove, he's considered mainstream now, like expressing ambivalence about it and embarrassment and saying that Trump acted poorly or whatever. And then over the next week, they'll all fall back in line again. They'll all get the story straight. That's my prediction, but we'll see.
And to the speech issue, you always want to talk with comedians, especially thoughtful, creative person like yourself, about the idea that a billionaire, Jeff Bezos, is telling the newspaper that he said he wasn't going to do anything about, wasn't going to affect its coverage. It's slant. Now he's telling them what to do. They got to be right-wing editorial pages. And the situation I mentioned about the president himself choosing what reporters are in there instead of the White House Correspondents Association, as well as just the canceling of words, the Gulf of America. Today, he also announced that English is the official language, which is, with all these apps, like language matters anymore. But nonetheless, these are all issues regarding speech and creating fear and censorship. So it's clearly a trend, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it.
I think everything is a trend, and we may have spoken about this in the past, so I apologize if I'm being redundant, but we didn't want to think when companies were starting up DEI initiatives and people like journalists started saying LGBTQ plus instead of just LGB or whatever. When the ball was moving in a way that seemed like in the direction of tolerance and in the direction of, quote, liberals, that was bullshit too. That these people, they're capitalists. These companies are there to follow trends and to make money. And they didn't start doing that because out of the goodness of their heart. I think a lot of these people, they might not have a problem with gay people. I'm talking about the decision makers at the top of these media companies. They might have gay friends and all that, but they don't really care about any of that stuff in terms of their job. But they understood that that's where the culture was going, the sort of Obama era optimism. And now the culture is going in a different direction in their minds. And so not only are they changing to fit that, it actually kind of is a lot easier and it's more compatible with the way they actually feel privately, especially the free market stuff and all that. So they're not just following a trend, they're leaping to make the trend even more ingrained. I'm just saying it's like all the stuff you're seeing Bezos do, these Mark Zuckerberg talking about masculinity and all that shit, they're just trend followers. That's it. But unfortunately, the trends are being created by the dumbest, least interesting people in the world.
Yeah, it really is true. They're the least interesting, low risk, usually inherited money. How they they have a VORP. They have a negative VORP. That's a value over replacement player, meaning that if you took your average person of average intelligence, average moral standing or whatever, all of these people who are in decision-making capacity at this point are below that average person, in my opinion. They just happen to have money and connections and brute belligerence. One of the most kind of objective values, including even in this country, at least when I was growing up, was that if you're a government official, you would try to at least hide the appearance of a conflict of interest, if not really try not to have any, with investments or connections to people or other incentives that might affect the way that you carry out policy or write a law. But that's gone. It would seem like having a conflict of interest is only, obviously it's still bad if you're a Democrat and they'll call out corruption and all kinds of things like that. But I'm like, it's just gone. That idea, I didn't think.
Yeah, the dike, we had every finger in every hole in the and it's now burst open. There's just water gushing through at this point. And I think it's their philosophy, and I don't think they're wrong necessarily. It's the difference between I walk into CVS and I look around and make sure nobody's looking, and I stick a candy bar in my pocket and I surreptitiously sneak out of the store. And if I get caught, I'm going to get in trouble. They're going to call the police or whatever. But if I walk in very confidently and I grab something and I grab a candy bar off the shelf and I just be like, oh yeah, I came to get this. And then you walk out, hey, where are you going? No, I had this before. I already had this. Remember, Dave sent me. Dave didn't call you and tell you I was going to bring it. This isn't a big deal is essentially what they're saying. So it's like all this, a Chinese investor who funneled $50 million to Trump through one of his crypto properties, just had his FEC station dropped or things like that, is the idea of just like, no, this is normal. What are you talking about? This is not illegal. Like, stop being weird. Oh, I think that the idea is just to be shamelessly criminal. I keep getting back to that. To me, the defining characteristic is the conquering of shame. Is that little moral voice inside yourself that tells you that you can only be so full of shit and you can only be so dishonest. And that prevents a lot of people just instinctively. When you're lying, you start stuttering, you start sweating. Is that Trump has just managed to push through that. Trump never had that. But I think what's happened is that Republicans have all seen, they'd be like, oh my God, you can just lie. You can just fucking lie. And the quote unquote institutions, the media, our system of government is not equipped to handle people who have just completely abandoned shame.
Very well said. Before I let you go, you are going to be joining us in Vegas. First, are you worried about flying at all?
No, I would say that if I had a 0.0005% chance of dying in a random plane crash, that might have gone up 10 times, but that's still only 0.0001. I have a sort of a needle in a haystack perspective when it comes to stuff like that. It probably won't happen to me. And so I can't really, like, when I drive on the highway, I don't know for a fact that a lunatic is not going to cross the median and crash right into my car.
Yeah,
but it's not going to stop me from yet.
Plus, you love to gamble. Here's the thing. You have this really good idea that you're going to be doing for us. And I want to get the pitch, the elevator pitch of your very original, fun idea to get people jazzed up, excited to come.
This is something that I've had this live show idea that I've been kicking around for 10 something years. And I never really moved forward with it. And I never could figure out how to structure it. And I'm still working on it. So I don't want to talk too much about it because I'm still trying to structure it. The working title, which will change, I think, is right now is Christian Finnegan's 59-Minute Cult. And essentially what it is that we, myself with the audience as a collective, in under an hour, are going to create our own religious movement based on a series of questions that I will pose to the audience, questions both ethical and esoteric. So basically, we are going to create a cult of our own with our own specific morals and rules and rituals. And by the end of the hour, the cult will be dissolved. But for that hour, we will have our own little religious movement. And that is, it sounds very vague. Like I said, I'm still trying to work on it, but it's basically like a spiritual Mad Lib is what it's going to be.
I love that. A spiritual Mad Lib. It sounds real fun. And with you being behind it and directing it, it's going to be awesome. I'm very much looking forward to that. And just seeing you and hanging out with you and watching your skin burn. So thank you very much for joining me today, as always. And I will talk to you next week, if not sooner. And we'll see you in Vegas. This was great. I really appreciate it. Thoughts. Thanks, buddy. There you go. Christian Finnegan, everybody. Saturdays with Christian. I always love catching up with him. And you can all catch up with Christian in Las Vegas. It's going to be awesome. Very much looking forward to hanging out with him out there and being part of his cult, as you said. All right, that's it. That's all I've got for you. Go buy John Carroll's album, johncarroll.org, right now. This is him singing, as always. We love him. Go support him and Christian. And thanks for your support of me, patreon.com/PeteDominic. Dropping new pods every day. Go over to youtube.com/standupwithPete. I'm trying to stand that up and need your subscription, which is free. Okay, that's it. That's all. Enjoy your weekend. Love you. Bye.
When you can't see the forest for the burning trees, you got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you got